A children's game. Entry 6. The three of us were joyous in the kitchen. We laughed over the grease-smeared table. We shared secrets, covered by the aroma of bacon. We sat in our chairs, encased in this thumping vessel. Every part of me had a pulse, and I could feel the blood flow through me roughly. Delilah kept swiveling her head around. Lucille was more static. She was so fixated on the old woman. "You blind, gal?" I asked. "On account of your eyes being all white and fluttery and such," Lucille barked. I wanted to scold her for such a rude comment. As I opened my mouth to do so, I had to analyze what she said. Those words, her vocabulary, her diction all changed since we started this trip. Am I crazy? I thought. No, child, I see more than most, Delilah quipped with a smile. I see you brought a friend. Delilah reached down to the floor and picked up this filthy rag-woven doll. I felt my blood stiffen as she sat that foul abhorrence on the table. It was different now. The stitchwork of its mouth had been cut. A piece of paper was cut in the shape of a tongue and sewn in place. The paper had writing on it. It read, "Damnamini sic at me. Maledictus, ut cumdat te. De glubo asa uestra." "Mommy, what does that mean?" Lucille asked. She asked me, but not ponderously. She asked me with a more inquisitive tone about me. She was checking to see if I knew. I was sure of it. "It means that someone wants to harm you. Someone very old wants to do very bad things to you. Burn it. Burn the doll. Burn the letter. Burn the house." I screamed. "What about you?" Delilah interjected. "Should we burn you, because that's what they want to hurt? Doors and hinges don't have bones. They don't have a taste of fear. You do. Death happened here. Death has been here for a long time. I can hear them chattering. Victims and killers alike. I see Camille. I see your mother. I see your friend, Marcus," Delilah said with a quivering voice. She turned her stare down to Lucille. "Who is Marcus?" I asked. Delilah opened her mouth to speak but froze. The house grew cold. Lucille got up from her chair and stood beside me. She had her arms at her sides and was just looking at me. Wasn't she scared, too? I looked back at Delilah while holding on to Lucille. "I see the deeds, so much blood," Delilah weakly murmured. Delilah shook her head and cupped her cheeks. "Indeed, to place the crucifix now," he asserted. Delilah went into her bag and retrieved a large, wooden, blocky cross. It was rather pristine. It glistened almost. But it smelled of sulfur. She sat the cross upright, on the table. "If I do this, you will see what I see. If you see, they see you. If you can see what's real and not the conduits before you, you might just live." "Shall I continue?" Delilah asked. I was pensive, but Lucille immediately answered with a resounding yes. "And you, ma'am?" Delilah asked again. She leaned in, gripping that cross tightly. I let saliva break its way down my throat. Yes, I stammered. "Well then," Delilah responded. "Place one hand on the cross, each of you," Delilah commanded. I did so. Lucille looked at me. She then turned to the cross. "It's okay, honey. I'll keep you safe," I assured her. Her tiny pink lips perched as she approached the cross. We all had a hand upon the cross now. Delilah spoke, "Dear Father, show us. Show us what darkness has hidden. Show us the lie we live and the truth to stay alive. Reveal and restore. Reveal and restore." Shadows danced along the walls and howled as she prayed. The shadows molded together on the wall, into one monstrous horn-bearing form. It extended its arm. A silhouette of a baby descended from its form. The baby fell into the hands of a man with a crown on his head. The baby cried fiercely. The man, I think a king, took a knife and plunged it into the heart. I screamed for him to stop, but he didn't. He then drank the child's blood. He held that lifeless thing by one leg and flung it into a pile of limbs. The shadowy king began to take another form. He grew taller. His hair was longer and he appeared muscular. He wiped his lips dry. Then he looked at me. A bowl of blistering wind ripped through my ears as the Beast King called me. More shadows came by his side. They began to merge and cover us. Lucille! I screamed. Lucille, Lucille. I was so desperate for an answer. I wanted to flee, but it was night all around me. The only light came from that cross on the table. I leapt to the table and grabbed it. Then there was light. Sun-kissed, golden blinding light. I peered out of a window and saw them. Lucille was sitting by the old oak tree. Luke was beside her. He had just carved a wooden duck and wanted to teach Lucille, but she kept getting splinters. Luke held her up like a newborn and smiled. He pointed over to a tree stump with a carving knife lodged deeply. I went out to them. The sun was so warming. I could feel them before I even got close. I could hear them and they didn't speak. I took up the carving knife as they waved me over. I smiled at them. I took that knife and drove it as hard as I could into Luke's throat. I watched his eyes roll back as he gagged on his own fluids. He convulsed so vivaciously, but his grip was infantile. I drove the knife up until I heard it grate against bone. Luke couldn't put batteries in the remote correctly. He couldn't never carve anything. The light peeled away. Every inch of it was instantly replaced by my mother's kitchen. I had my hand on the cross. I panicked as I scoured the room. Lucille was gone. Delilah, did you see where my baby went? I cried. Delilah was hot. Her face was smattered in greasy sweat. Smoke emanated from her. She wheezed and breathed deeply. Gone, taken through that door. I'm afraid. But the vessel remains, Delilah said faintly before slipping into sleep.